once again from my wonderful office at Columbia Self-Storage. It's Thursday, it must be Critical Race Theory Thursday here during my office hours. And today I want to pick up a tradition, a methodology that is incredibly important to critical race theory, and it's something that those early theorists pioneered, which is this idea of storytelling, of incorporating real people's lives in the way they theorize law, justice, equality. The critical race theorists really rejected the idea that the best way to think about injustice and the ways that laws can address it is to abstract away from the particular, to abstract up to 30,000 feet into abstract principles of equality, due process, equal protection, etc. But instead, one always has to keep an eye on the ground. As Mari Matsuda said in her work, look to the bottom, that wisdom lies in the experiences of real people. So we get with Patricia Williams, with Derek Bell, with Richard Delgado, and other of the early critical race theorists, a kind of storytelling, the use of metaphor, of the collective wisdom of the community as the place to start and the place to ground critical race theory. So let me talk in particular about one of the articles that was written by an early critical race theorist, Professor Cheryl Harris, that I have found transformative in my thinking about law, about race-based equality, and about the incredible potence of white supremacy. Professor Harris wrote a piece published in the Harvard Law Review in 1993 called Whiteness as Property. And in this piece, she begins with a story about her grandmother, who had grown up outside Yazoo City of Mississippi and had moved up to Chicago, like so many formerly enslaved people or their families, as part of the Great Migration. And she was trying to make a way for her family as a single mother. And she had the capacity as a white passing person, a black person who could pass as white, to apply for a job in one of the department stores in Chicago, which she did. And as Harris describes it, she would leave her home in the black community, send her kids to the black schools, get on the bus only with black people, and travel north into the Loop, into downtown Chicago, and work as a white person. And not only was she passing, says Harris, she was trespassing on, in and through a white identity, which led Harris to talk about the potency, the power, the value, the enduring, sustainable value of whiteness as a kind of property. So let me give you a few of her thoughts, which are just, I think, transformative. As she describes, in thinking about whiteness as a kind of property interest, white identity conferred tangible and economically valuable benefits, and it was jealously guarded as a valued possession, allowed only to those who met a strict standard of proof. Whiteness, the right to white identity as embraced by the law, is property if by property one means all of a person's legal right. One of the things she does so brilliantly in this paper is she looks at the fundamental way in which we talk about in law school what makes something property as opposed to something else. One of those things is this idea of a right to use and enjoyment. Like, this is my thing, I can use it, you can't. I can do things with it in the world no one else can because it's mine. And what she says about whiteness and about this idea of use and enjoyment is that when the law recognizes, either implicitly or explicitly, the settled expectations of whites built on the privileges and benefits produced by white supremacy, it acknowledges and reinforces a property interest in whiteness that at the same time reproduces black subordination. So we all know that being white gives you privileges in society. There is stuff you can do places you can enter, power you can exercise, ways that you can walk by a police officer without a worry, walk into a Tiffany's or an expensive retail store and not worry of being followed around. There are all sorts of ways in which you can use your whiteness as a kind of privilege, as something that is actually quite useful in society, just like having other kinds of property one can use and enjoy. She goes on to then point to one of the other elements of property that we teach in first-year property class, which is this idea of a right to exclude. And here she says, whiteness becomes an exclusive club whose membership was closely and grudgingly guarded. In this sense, the right to exclude means this is mine, not yours. And if you trespass on my property, that's a violation of the rules of property. You violated my rights. And if we think to, in the United States, the history of this one drop of blood rule, that if you have one drop of black blood, you lose your ability, you are no longer white. This is a rule that excludes, even through the metaphor of a drop of blood, which of course doesn't have any real meaning. It's not something one can measure. But it's what whiteness has done is creating a set of rules that exclude anybody who has even a taint, a whiff of blackness to them. You are not eligible for the club. These are the rules of whiteness enforced by white people in ways that then reinforce black subordination. So she walks through these elements of the property-like quality of whiteness that I thought was a really useful way to think about how does whiteness work in society? Where does it gain its power? And to understand it in property terms gives you kind of a new way to think about it. Now, why I raise it today is because I think it's a useful way to also understand what's going on in this particular political moment. I did the excruciating thing of watching Donald Trump's message, 70-minute, I don't even know what to call it, speech, to the assembled leadership of the military the other day. And you hear a grudging resentment about something being taken, some injustice being done that needed to be corrected. He returned time and again, as he has in his speeches, to this fixation with merit as a way to understand what has happened in our society that he feels needs to be made great again. And this idea of merit is really about there is some kind of trespass that has taken place. People who do not belong here, do not belong in the military, do not belong in our colleges and universities, are taking seats from those who do. So listen to this little excerpt.
Merit. Everything's based on merit. You're all based on merit. We're not going to have somebody taking your place for political reasons because they are politically correct, and you're not.
If we understand that in property-like terms, that there has been either a trespass or a taking, a theft of seats, of roles, of power, of responsibility that properly belongs to certain types of people by those to whom that doesn't belong, who do not merit it, do not own the right to it. He also talks about students with C averages who are taking places of those who deserve to have those seats. Again, you hear this politics of resentment, that those seats have been stolen.
We went in for colleges, where kids with a C average are getting into the best colleges, and the kids with A averages won't get in, and kids with the highest boards and the highest marks and the best marks couldn't get into the best schools, and people that had not good boards and not very good marks, okay, but nothing special, they were getting into our best college.
Again, think about how this is a kind of property analysis. Some people have an entitlement, a right to those actual seats, and other people do not, who have no right, no place in those colleges, in those universities, in the military, in the government. And so again, I want to say that Cheryl Harris's idea of whiteness as property, I think just provides us with a new way to kind of understand the sense of resentment and the sense of entitlement and expectation that you see that animates so much of this MAGA politics now, is this sense of something having been taken that was owed to certain white people and is certainly not entitled to be given to people who they think are unworthy, undeserving, and have no right or property interest in those public and those private spaces. Cheryl Harris, Whiteness as Property. It's an amazing article, beautifully written. I highly recommend it as something to read as part of the fundamental canon of critical race theory.